Good evening, it's Natalie with Heart's Desire Spice Blends, and we are here with another installment of Easy Weeknight Cooking for your busy weeknights. So what we're going to do tonight is just a really scrumptious pulled pork that is not only easy, but it has my family asking me to bring the pulled pork every time. So what we're going to need for this recipe are a very few amount of things. 2 cups of either chicken broth or apple juice, 2 tablespoons of chili bowl, 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. Make sure this is kosher, not regular salt, or else things are gonna be really way too salty. If you're looking at normal table salt, the small granules, no more than a teaspoon. And then we're going to be using 6 tablespoons of brown sugar. And of course, you need a pork roast. That's it, other than the crock pot, of course. Now, I also made this in a pressure cooker. It works fabulously there, about 30 minutes for about 2 pounds or so. Gets it falling apart and life is good. So why don't we get started? First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to make a rub for this roast and reserve aside half of that rub as finishing spices. This is cool stuff. So we're going to start off with our 6 tablespoons of brown sugar. We're going to put that right into a bowl that we're going to use to mix everything up in. You want a little bit of room here. So go ahead and mix that up real quick. You're going to then take your 2 tablespoons of our chili bowl spice. It is just made for anything Tex-Mex. Absolutely made for anything Tex-Mex. Does fabulous things with it. And 1.5 teaspoons of your kosher salt. Just toss them all into this bowl here and put those aside. We are then going to take this wonderful little mixture right here and mix it up. Make sure that everything gets basically the same color and texture all the way around. Sometimes this takes some elbow grease, sometimes it doesn't. Depends on your bowl, depends on how much you're making. And if you find later on in this recipe, there's just not enough, Natalie, make some more. And depends on the size of your roast, it really does. So just make sure that everything is the same texture, color, the whole 9 yards in this. And then you can put this mixture aside. That is looking good. And of course, I'm being the messy cook, but it doesn't matter right now because it's all very cleanupable. Next thing you're gonna do, you're gonna pull over your beautiful pork roast and you're gonna pat it dry. Why do you do that? Honestly, it's so that this rub can actually stick and has staying power on it. So if you're going to be putting a rub on a roast or any kind of, and you're gonna be putting that meat, say, on the trigger, or you just want a dry rub, then definitely pat it dry, because otherwise you're going to be getting stuff on there. Well, you're going to be having your spices not sticking. So the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna pull this over, because if some of this rub gets, inside the bowl or something like that, it's not a big deal. Before I get too far into this, why don't we reserve half of this before I get my hands too schmutzy. So I'm using utensils for this so I do not cross-contaminate spices, because these are going to be going in after the whole thing is cooked. That goes aside, and now I get to use this for my roast. And we are going to get messy, my darlings. Go ahead and pat that thing all over your roast. Just go ahead and rub it in, and just as much as will stick, you're gonna just schmutz on there. If your roast has a fat cap on it, all the better, honestly. This one has some ribs on it, etc. I do not remember what cut this is, but it's got a lot of great connective tissue, which is going to make all sorts of yumminess later. here. And so go ahead and just crust this thing with your spices as much as possible. Getting into those crevices, scooping all the spices up off the bottom. Now, the reason I'm doing this, yes, we could just put these spices in here with the liquid we're going to be cooking this in and call it good. But then the other side is not as flavored, as we want to pack as much flavor on this puppy as humanly possible. And there's that. Go ahead and wash your hands and come back for the next step. So I've washed my hands, and now we go ahead and pour in our chicken broth, but not on top of this. We do not want to wash those spices off. So normally what I'll do is I'll take this out onto the counter and go ahead and push the spices on there, put the chicken broth in my container before I put that back in, and then pour in my chicken broth or apple juice. And this, my friends, is ready for the slow cooker. Put it on in the morning or let it cook all night long. Absolutely yummy stuff. And by the time you're done, it really is falling apart, which is what we're looking. So why don't I put this aside and show you what we've got in the pressure cooker behind me. What we have here, my darlings, is absolutely wonderful yumminess. Get out a cutting board with a trough around it because you're going to be catching a lot of juices here. Jill, look at this. Oh my gosh. This is gorgeous. You got to see this. This was a pork loin roast right here. It's got a beautiful fat cap on it, and it is ready to fall apart. That is exactly what we are looking for. We've got a lot of spices still stuck on that thing. And really, if it comes apart with just your tongs, I mean, are you seeing this? Seriously, it is literally just coming apart. Meanwhile, you're going to be reserving all of this wonderful broth that this thing came out of. Now, what we have here is I'm just pulling this apart really easily. And oh my gosh, boy, once it's been cooked all day or in the pressure cooker, really it falls apart very easily, which is what we're looking for a pulled pork. This does not have to be an excruciating process. The whole point of putting it in the slow cooker is so that it does fall apart. Okay, definitely want another bowl in order to put this stuff in because we're going to be adding a little bit of that reserved broth plus the reserved spices right into here. And would you look at this? Seriously? Literally just falling apart. And it gets better. Now, the rest of our rubbed spices are gonna go right in here. You're going to take some of your reserved stock right in here, and you're going to pour just a little bit over here, just to moisten it a little bit, and then keep it aside. Next thing we're gonna do is, because we poured a little bit of that stock in there, we're adding a little bit more moisture to this, and that brown sugar, those spices just melt. This is a beautiful mess. And my friends, this is pulled pork. If you're putting this on sandwiches, you could go ahead and thicken some of this broth back here. You thicken it up enough and it just stands in for your barbecue sauce any day of the week. Add a little bit more of those finishing spices to it and it's even better. So what do you say we check this out? Yum. Oh yeah. It's sweet like it should be. It's Tex-Mex like it should be. I mean, the molasses and that dark brown sugar is just fabulous. The chili bowling here adds so much flavor. And who would have thought that that entire rub had 3 things in it? So from our house to yours, that is a fabulous pulled pork. That is a massive crowd pleaser at my place where the foodies are plentiful. So from our house to yours, you guys keep things tasty and we will see you next week.